Welcome to the Get Invested podcast, where we share conversations I've enjoyed with experts from all walks of life to uncover their secret know-how on where they invest their time, their skills and their money, and the benefits this has created. Get Invested helps you to live more, work less, and leave a legacy by investing now. Listen to the show to discover top tips on how to get started, to make the most of your investment journey, and ultimately to be living the dream. More episodes can be found on iTunes or at khgroup.com.au/get invested. Thanks for listening, and let's get invested.
Bushy Martin.
Take two, can you hear me?
Mate, I can hear you just fine. How are you?
You beauty. Yeah, the wonders of technology, mate. I'm bloody good. Any better and I'd be dangerous, mate.
Mate, it was good to see you the other day as well.
It was bloody good. Really, it was a great session, mate, by the way.
You enjoyed it?
Oh, I did, mate. I reckon that lady of yours, she's a keeper, mate. Hey?
I like
what do you
her.
reckon?
I like
she's
her.
Mate, she's one of those, but there's very few people that actually make me feel special the very first time you meet them. And, mate, she's just got this way of cutting right through. It was like, shit. So I think she struck gold, and I reckon you have too, mate.
Oh, mate, kind words. Kind words. Appreciate it. Tell me, what's going on in life? What's news? Stoked to be doing this podcast with you, mate.
Mate, I'm very humbled, mate. Very humbled indeed, mate. You're as you now know, I've got a bit of a man crush on the mighty Glen Carlson, and the opportunity to have a chat to you, mate, and share some stuff. Bloody awesome. Looking forward to it, mate. It's going to be really good.
And mate, when the opportunity came up and your name popped up, like you've just got one of the greatest energies of anybody that I've come across. Your enthusiasm, optimism, can do, never an issue, take the ball and bounce it. Just wanted to really kind of acknowledge you for that. And I'm looking forward to getting stuck into the show. But give me an update. What's news for 2018?
Yeah, we're a real exciting year, mate, coming ahead. So the long-awaited Bush Bible, the book, a pallet load of them finally arrived last Friday. And Michael Hanrahan's been a champion, mate. We've used him to put the whole thing together. And so that's hit the deck. So we're about to go into a promotion program on that.
For the Freedom Formula?
Yeah, mate. So, I mean, I've already been leveraging it long before it hit the deck. I've been talking about the upcoming book for 12 months, and it's already been an entree into a whole heap of opportunities that wouldn't have happened if I couldn't say that I'd written a book. So that's been sensational. My own podcast, Get Invested, that's ready to roll end of this month, thanks to Ronsley and the team. So those two key assets are going to really up the ante in relation to the whole business approach. And so the really good news, mate, I think, for us as a business and individually is that I've finally got myself to a point where I've worked myself out of the business, so I'm no longer into the delivery piece. My good wife, Sonia, who you know and have met, she's just an absolute systems queen, so she's the back end of the business. She's just systemising the shit out of it so that it's templated within an inch of its life, mate. So that's exciting because it means from a consistency of delivery perspective, it's going to be really good. And we've added a few extra team members internally, which is pretty exciting. So we've still got a few building blocks in the ecosystem to put in place. So I'm still on asset build mode, but the big push for me now will be all about partnerships and promotions, which is the stuff I love. I just really enjoy that part of the exercise, mate. So it's following the old KPI framework, mate, has been life-changing for us, mate. We've, it's like you repeatedly say, we've had a solid business for a long time, and it's been a good business. But the just following the menu from KPI has just really pretty much transformed what we do and how we do it. So, mate, we're really excited about what 2018 is going to do for us.
Mate, it transformed my life and my business. Just using those 5 principles around as a focus point for keeping me strategic. Like I'm either pitching, I'm publishing content, I'm making the products better or more scalable, I'm doing something around profile, whether it's my personal profile, the company's profile, or the product's profile, or I'm doing partnerships. If I'm not doing one of those things or building assets into one of those 5 things, I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm doing a low value kind of activity.
Yeah.
And, you know, until such time as, you know, we really started applying, because I mean, of course, we've applied this framework for ourselves. Until such time as we started applying that for ourselves, there wasn't the congruence in being able to share it with others. But like I can't understand how we were successful in business beforehand.
Yeah, I get you. I think it was almost by mistake for us too, mate, to be honest. We've just built a business one person at a time, all relationship, all referral based. And that's great. That was good, solid business, but it meant that I was out there every day, night and weekend flogging myself on the Hastings. And that was good to hone the craft. It really has honed the craft. So the DNA and the IP, as a result of having to get on stage all the time and do it, is probably a necessary step. But plugging that in now to what we're doing in building and productising what is otherwise a services business has just been transformational, mate. So it's really exciting.
People wonder, why do you do pitch first and not product first? And it's because that clarity of message in terms of what you're trying to do, who you're trying to do it for, the problems you're solving, and how to communicate that in a freaking compelling way that because of the nature and the way in which you're delivering it makes the competition irrelevant. Like, that is the starting point to then reverse engineer. All right.
Totally. Yeah.
Based on that perfect pitch, like, how do we engineer the product ecosystem to kind of to match that? And it's I mean, for me, it's just a never ending dance. It keeps changing. This year's been big for us as well. Big kickoff to the year. My focus for this year has been health and energy as opposed to business. Great. Pretty much every other year it's been business, but this year it's been health and energy. I came across a couple of Tim Ferriss podcasts.
Yes,
that have changed my freaking life. No,
no,
it was one old one with a guy called Dom D'Agostino around nutritional ketosis as a diet kind of modality or approach or lifestyle or whatever. And the other one was with a guy called Coach Summer around gymnastic strength training. Both of those things combined, this is my 14th day in nutritional ketosis, and I tell you, like, I feel like that dude out of Limitless.
Mate, what's shit. I'm pretty keen, mate. I'm pretty keen to have a chat to you about it. Is it a high protein, low carb thing, or is
no, high protein or keto? Basically it's based on the idea that you've got 3 types of fuel you can burn. You can burn sugar, and the majority of the population are sugar burners. So you eat carbs, and it turns into sugar. You can burn fat, which is like the kind of paleo sort of approach, or the old Atkins kind of approach, or the modified Atkins approach. And then there are ketones, which occur as far as I'm aware, a byproduct of the fat metabolism process. And your brain can only burn or use either glucose or ketones for fuel. And so I've been going through this process. I read a book by a guy called Mark Sisson called The Keto Reset Diet. Highly recommend it. As we were growing the business last year, the number one thing that was getting in my way was my energy levels. I just didn't feel like I had that edge where I needed to be. And I went to an Anthony Robbins conference, and by day 3, I was flagging. And he just goes, "You're all probably exhausted at this point because you're all sugar burners." And I'm like, fuck, I am based on my diet. And I had a good diet. Like, I'm not eating Big Macs and chips and shit. But there was still enough of that carbohydrate to keep me in sugar mode, meaning I'm on that energy kind of roller coaster, crash and burn.
Yeah, snap. That's where I am.
So basically it's lots of fat. So call it 70-75% fat, 25% protein. So not a lot of protein.
Yeah, okay.
And I do half of my protein from animal and half my protein from veg. So my animal consumption is like less than 10% of my daily calories. So it's a very small amount of meat. High quality, high fat meat. And the rest is carbohydrate. So less than 50 carbs a day, or about 40 net carbs, depending on how you're measuring it. But but like, that's a giant bowl of salad or veg.
Yeah.
Easily.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, easy.
And the rest is like coconut oil, avocados, olive oils, butters, things like that.
Awesome.
And it's just pushed me in to burn this other fuel source. And because I've got body fat, like everyone does,
yep. Choose
I
that first.
I never feel hungry because it can always pull from that to push me through. So I went from struggling to get up like 7:30 to 5:30, bang, I'm up. 5 o'clock, bang, I'm up. And I've never been a morning person, and it just goes all the way through.
Bloody awesome, mate. I went and saw a naturopath's not really the right word a few years because I got a dodgy thyroid, which overactive adrenal glands quite a few years back pretty much ate the thyroid, they tell me. And once the thyroid's gone, mate, your thermometer's gone, the metabolism slows down, you stack on weight at the drop of a hat. And that presented some challenges because I almost felt I had the old chronic fatigue syndrome there for quite some time. Got onto this guy who put me on desiccated pig thyroid, which it's just crushed up pig thyroid, and that sorted that out. And then I've sort of went on a similar journey diet-wise, and on a very similar diet to what you're talking about. I must admit I got a bit slack over the last 18 months, and Sonia and I are pretty keen to get back on track because that's probably the only area in my life at the moment that's pretty shit, actually. I drink way too much coffee because I just enjoy it. And while I don't eat much sugar at all and haven't for a long time, I'm still not eating quite the right foods and too much animal fat in there, mate, for sure. So I'm going to have a look at that. Mark Kisson, was it? Mark Kisson with a
Mark
ketone
Sisson.
diet?
Yeah, Mark Sisson.
Sisson, cool.
Yeah. Hey,
check it out.
mate, I've got an idea. I've just been testing the audio levels, but I really love that whole conversation we just had. Do you have any objections if we share that with the world?
For sure. Absolutely.
No issues about the thyroid stuff?
No, mate. What I've learned, I'm at that crusty old age, mate, where I'll share anything now because, quite frankly, I couldn't give a fuck. Let's be honest.
We're going to have a good chat, mate. We're going to have a good chat. And by the way, I'm not actually even going to edit this out, but I'll make sure there's a proper introduction that's been had so everyone gets context and understands who you are and what you've done. But, mate, pitching is obviously a big part of what we do and what we talk about. And when someone asks you, if you've never met them, what do you do? What do you say without kind of sounding like a douchebag?
I think I still sound like a douchebag, Glenn, but because that goes with the territory. But really simply, our businesses know how we're property investment advisors and finance brokers, and we help people to transform their lives by working less, living more, and regaining their freedom through replacing their income with property.
And you pretty much, I mean, you did that yourself. That's where all this sort of started from.
Spot on, mate. Spot on. I had some pretty interesting challenges about 20-odd years ago, mate. They say bad things happen in threes. Well, that was certainly the case at the time. And it was a real wake-up call.
What happened?
It was a real time to... three things, mate. I followed the normal Australian dream, mate, pretty much, which was my old man was a role model. He was an absolute workaholic, worked 7 days a week, flogged himself. The old model was pretty much work hard, get married, buy a house, climb yourself up the corporate ladder, and then when you retire, live your bucket list, which is pretty much almost a standard menu for a lot of Aussies. And what happened?
I think it's a standard menu for, we got people from America, from London, from Singapore. I think it's a pretty standard global paradigm in, I guess if we call it developed sort of countries.
Yeah, I totally agree, mate. And I was just following along that road blindly. I think a lot of the time when we're in that mode, we're sort of sleepwalking, and found out that it just didn't work, mate. I was an architect, so if I go back far enough, mate, we go right to the start of the journey. As a young boy, I was a very sickly kid. I was the punk-chested runt in school because I had really chronic asthma, which God knows where that came from. But that created some challenges. I was always underdeveloped compared to everyone else, and we moved around a fair bit, Glenn. So my old man was a stock and station agent, and we were off the land, and hence that's where the Bushy comes from, a boy from the bush. And in moving around, I ended up being 1 to 2 years younger than everyone else in the class, so I was way behind. And what it meant was I had to work my ass off to keep pace with everyone else. And the lessons that taught me were that if you're going to get ahead, you have to work harder than everyone else. So that was the model I took through, and yeah, it got results. But I became a victim of my own success in a way, because I was then expected to do well in everything I did. So all the way through school, all the way through uni, doing architecture. I came out of architecture and was going to change the world. I was going to design these fantastic buildings and, sort of go down in history like someone who designed the pyramids, all that stuff when you're young and foolish and don't know any better. Worked my ass off. So I got into the industry and I travelled all over. I had a great time as a single guy travelling all over the country and in parts of Asia, New Guinea, Thailand, you name it, doing some fantastic architecture. But it was totally obsessional, mate. Took over my life, and it was literally 7 days a week, 14 hours a day, and got married, had my fantastic son, and I was an absentee. So it fell into a screaming heap. The marriage went belly up. I got so totally frustrated with my life. I was hating what I was doing, because it's the old story, mate. The better you are at doing something, the less you do of it. I started managing architectural practices and teams and large numbers of people. I became an absolute arsehole because as an architect, you're designing the world, and you become hypercritical because everything's got to be just right. So, and it didn't stop at work. I became hypercritical of absolutely everything and everywhere, and was a pretty miserable bastard, Glenn, to be quite honest. At the same time, so the marriage went belly up. I got really dejected with the whole career. My last job in architecture was to privatise the old Commonwealth Construction Services. They hired a bunch of us from the private sector to turn it into a business and then sell it. So I worked myself out of a job. So I was unemployed, divorced, and at the same time the old man's health crashed into a screaming heap. He started having strokes, bowel cancer, a whole bunch of shit was going on. And I was like, holy moly, I need to wake up to myself here. He grabbed me by the throat, dribbling out of the side of his mouth, and said, son, you better learn from me. Stop working for money and start getting money working for you. So,
wow.
Big epiphany, mate. So all of those things
that was a pretty visceral kind of a mental picture right there. I think that would change anyone's path.
Well, I had a what I call my Howard Hughes year, mate, where I hid. I pulled away from the world, because I must say the thing that I still carry as a scar is the failure of my marriage, because it's affected my son. And my son's a legend, but I'd be kidding myself if I said it didn't have a major impact on his formative years, because you're pretty much the part-time, good-time uncle when you go through that process, and it really caused me to reset and think about what needs to happen to avoid repeating the same thing. So I was lucky enough to meet Sonia, and Sonia was a similar boat. She'd come out of a relationship. We were both at ground zero, didn't have 2 cents to rub together, and we sat down and thought, okay, well, how are we going to make this work? And because my knowledge and passion has always been property, right from the time I was an asthmatic in bed, I was designing houses and drawing, and always had a pen in my hand, Glenn. And it was like, okay, well, how can we leverage our passions and our knowledge and expand on that? And I went to one of those Robert Kiyosaki sessions. I call it the Kiyosaki moment. And he started to talk about the magic of recurring and passive income. I was like, bingo, there we go. That's the answer. So we started investing in property, did it really tough, made every mistake you can possibly make, I think, in the early days, because I had very low trust, mate, generally at that stage. So it was like, no, I don't trust anyone else to help me. I'm going to do this myself. And made a bunch of mistakes, but learned along the way. And 15 years later, we'd put together a pretty substantial portfolio. And the real blessing of listening to my old man's words, mate, was that I could afford to take the time, and it was about 12 months, to look after my mum, who'd been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And if it wasn't for the fact that the old man had grabbed me by the throat and said, wake up, and that we'd started to invest in assets that were going to give us an income stream without requiring us there to do it, I wouldn't have had the privilege of being able to see Mum leave the world in her own home at bed with dignity and peace, mate. So I feel blessed as a result, and all I want to do now, mate, is to help other people do the same, and that's where Know How was born, and that's why I've sort of gone down this journey and joined yourself with Dent and the Key Person of Influence program, because I've got a burning message that I want to share with as many entrepreneurs as I possibly can, that there is a way out, because there's a lot of people who feel stuck and trapped in their own lifestyle, because in the current world, and particularly in Australia, we've got access to everything at our fingertips. So we do. It comes at a huge cost. A lot of people are leveraged up to the max, and all of a sudden they have to work. It's not that they want to anymore. They have to maintain the lifestyle that they think their family deserves, and they feel trapped on the treadmill. So everyone wants freedom. Everyone wants to feel fulfilled, Glenn. What I've learned over time is that the major contributor to achieving that freedom is to have time on your hands. And you can only get time on your hands if you're creating an income vehicle that doesn't rely on you to deliver it.
I think, sorry, continue.
Yeah, so and that can be business, that can be equities, that can be property. Property is the vehicle that's worked so well for us. So we've just really now spent our time working on a system that means that we can help others to achieve the same thing. So, and as I've sort of mentioned, working with yourself has given us the ability to reach a larger audience, get very clear on the message, and then create a megaphone that's attracting the people who believe the same thing.
And mate, you're just doing it so well, and so I'd love to really kind of reverse engineer or kind of deconstruct some of those real elements, so a listener from a business perspective can kind of take some of those experiences that you've had on the rebuild, I suppose. So what I'd love to do this, right? I mean, you mentioned KPI a couple of times. I don't want this to be like, it's not meant, this podcast is never meant to be a kind of a KPI pitch, but because you've mentioned it, we might as well use the 5 Ps as a clear framework on this one, right? So I'm not going to do it in the order that they occur in, though, because I want people to get a bit of a sense of what did the general before and after of your business look like, separate to the property. So if you separate property, let's go whatever the time frame you think. 3 years ago, what did your business look like then? And then talk to me about some of the key things. Once you've done that, what are some of the key things that have changed?
Yep.
And then we'll dig into some of that.
Yeah, well, I might even step back a little bit further because it gives some context to where we're at now and why we're at now. So when I gave architecture away, mate, and I gave it away, Sonia and I started a property management business. That was our first entree into the whole recurring income routine, because if you get enough properties under management, then that's giving you a steady income and a saleable asset, which we did actually sell last year very profitably. It became fairly evident along that journey that if you can't get your hands on the money, you can't continue to leverage into property. So we started a finance brokerage in partnership at that stage with a couple of highly expert lending guys that had experience in that area, because I was coming in cold, so I wanted to be alongside some good people. And we built a very successful business out of that, mate. But we became slaves to that business because we had 30 people. It was an awesome business, getting great reputation. And the beauty of the finance business is that you build up a trail book that's giving you income every week. You know, there's a very comfortable income stream coming in without having to get out of bed. So that was awesome. But because we'd built this machine, hungry machine, we were suddenly slaves to it again. It's like, no, this is bollocks. So the three of us were 3 partners at the time. We had a prenup when we got together on how we were going to exit the business, because we knew at some point in time that would occur. And that's the best thing we've ever done, is had that prenup, because it was so well documented in terms of what had to happen, how it was going to manoeuvre through. There was no ugly divorce. We sort of moved from sleeping together into separate bedrooms and then moved house. That's pretty much how I used to describe it.
Did you bring a third party in to craft that, or did you knock it up yourselves?
Most of it ourselves. So, mate, one of the lessons I learned early, and I'm going off track here, I'm sorry, but...
that's the point. This could almost be called the Off Track Podcast.
In my very early days, mate, I was very ambitious. So as a young architect, I went into business with a guy who absolutely raped me, mate. He saw me coming. I was that naive and energetic that he stitched me up big time. And I learned from that. It was like, okay, that's never going to happen again. In fact, I was adamant that I'd never go into business with anyone again, actually. But maturity and time changes those things, and there was a need for what we're doing to get together with someone who had that finance background, and they were looking for the property background, because I had excellent property background, so it was a good marriage. So we had a love-in, I call it a love-in, and we spent a whole day deciding whether we could live with each other, and most of that day was talking about how we were going to get out, not how we're going to get in. And we got a lawyer to draw that up. We actually got it documented, but 90% of the document was actually put together by the three of us. And it's seriously been the best thing we've ever done, because the three of us are still great mates. We catch up for lunch. If I've got an issue that I'm not sure about, I'll ring one of the guys and say, hey, what about this? Have you come across this? What would you do here? So that's been legendary. And what it's done is, because of the way we'd structured the business, it's fueled the new business, Know-How. So Know-How's only been in place since the beginning of 2015. But because of the maturity and the financial support that continues as a result of what we did with the previous business, it's made it very easy, mate. So it's bought us space, time, and funds to be able to do the strategic things that we know we need to do to really build a bulletproof and saleable exercise at some point down the track. So moving with that, what that meant was, when Know-How kicked off, we were back to ground zero. So there was only four of us when we started off with Know-How. And I took some of the team from the previous business with me, and I was up to the eyeballs with it, mate, doing everything. As you do, any start-off business, you run hard early. You do it all yourself until you can afford to do otherwise. So I was pretty much back on the bandwagon, working ridiculous hours. And I often say in the finance space, you're a bit like a vampire. You come out at nights and weekends because that's when you can catch up with people. Mum and Dad, the only time you can catch up with them is generally after hours. So did a lot of nights, a lot of weekends. I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. So we started lifting the head and thinking, okay, well, how can we create a business that doesn't rely on us, but we do the fun stuff? And in that search, strangely enough, we came across Dent and the Key Person of Influence program, and that really provided the ladder. So the analogy I often use, and it's the same I use with people who have an interest in property, Glenn, is that we were wandering around in the mist. We had a vague idea of where the top of the mountain was, but we couldn't actually see it. And the mist cleared when we jumped on board with the KPI program, because it gave us real clarity around the roadmap. It gave us the tools, the ladders, and even the Sherpas that we needed to climb Everest, because we knew exactly where we're heading. We had the tools to do it. We had the frameworks to do it. And the real bonus is that we had the experts in each key aspect of it to guide and direct us and motivate us along that road. So the property journey is no different, by the way. But if I look then and now, so a bit over 12 months, probably 18 months ago, I was busting the buns, burning the midnight, getting exhausted again. If I roll forward to now, I'm doing all the fun stuff. It's still a work in progress, Glenn. We've still got a lot of stuff that we're going to build around this ecosystem to improve it, but we're a mile ahead, and the results speak for themselves. I mean, I'm in the final stages of negotiating a preferred partnership agreement with the Australian Medical Association, which would never have even been on the agenda if it hadn't been for KPI, because even though my book, The Freedom Formula, is just about to hit the deck, I've been promoting it shamelessly for quite some time, and it was the lever that got me through the door to have a chat to them, to even be considered to to negotiate that. If I look at the other things that have occurred over the last 12 months, I was listed as one of the top 10, and very humble to do so, one of the top 10 Australian property specialists by the Property Investor magazine. And that's a direct result of just being visible. Because prior to doing the program, we just weren't visible, mate. So what I'm really excited about moving forward is that adopting each of those P's, particularly the pitch, and I think the piece of gold really, Glenn, if I look at the 5 elements of that structure, the one that's been most transformational from a foundational perspective has actually been the publish. Because if you have to sit down and write a book that you know that your peers are going to read, you put a shitload of time into getting really crystal clear about what you're saying, you back it up, and what it helped to do was, between that and pitch, was really refine the communication in such a way that I actually understood it and could talk about it far better than I ever did. And that forced reflection has made a major impact on what we say to who and how we actually behave as a business, because it's provided the threads and the unique way we've actually documented that message is really positioned ourselves to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace.
When you say documented that process, because we talk a lot about the idea of, focus on one area like pitching or whatever it is for an extended period of time, increase your skill set, increase your capacity, then build out the assets, right? So you've obviously improved the skill set on it. When you talk about documentation, can you explain that a bit more? What do you mean?
Yeah, okay. So the process that we've been taking people through, and it's if I try to describe it in simple terms that people can relate to, the property business for many years, it's full of sharks. It's because most people in the property game are in it for one reason, that is they've got a vested interest to flog something to someone. So what we've deliberately done is positioned ourselves on the client side of all of that. So you've got accountants who independently and transparently look after your accounting and your tax needs. You've got financial planners who act as the trusted advisor to look out the equities, shares and other components of an investment portfolio. But no one was doing that in the property game. So we've now positioned ourselves client side effectively as the financial planner for property, if you like. And what goes with that is sitting down first and looking at the why. So we've come up with a 6-step process through the Property Wealth Clock that is then supported by the Freedom Formula principles that helps people go through a journey that's sustainable, because property, mate, generally, a lot of people jump into it thinking it's a get rich quick. Would you believe that 50% of property investors sell the property within 5 years of buying it? And that's because they focus on the property, not anything else. The property is the last part of that journey. So we've documented a consistent, unique process that takes people from why am I doing it, where's it going to get me to, how am I going to get there? So that's the roadmap piece. Then property is a game of finance, mate. It's all about the structure, and it's all about the dollar side of the equation. So we've got a very thorough process for that. That gets to a point where they've real clarity on what sort of property, where, how, and what it's going to cost them before they even start looking at bricks and mortar. So we've built the whole thing on paper before we start. And then the final part of our business is a property facilitation. So we act as effectively as a project manager, if you like, to assemble all of the experts that come on board to deliver the process. Now, if I paralleled that with the KPI process, you've documented a system. You've got experts to deliver each component of that, and you take people through that to end up with a scalable and saleable business at the end of that journey. That asset building process that you have is exactly the same as what we do with our clients, only property is the end outcome. So we introduce independent experts. There's none of this one-stop shop, slippery shoe salesman routine that you get used to see a fair bit in Queensland. It's let's find the best player for each component of this property delivery in whichever area we're dealing with, and they're all independent, so we don't all agree with each other. But what it does is give the client a really robust, fully informed ability to make decisions that feel comfortable to them. And we also provide the sustainability. So property is like success in any area, Glenn. It's a long-term journey, and we'll go off on a tangent on this shortly, I'm sure, in terms of what does it take to get success. But by building that process in, it's not just teach them, fly in, fly out, and leave them to it. We partner with our clients, as we do with the other providers, to make sure that we're alongside them for the full 10 to 15-year journey. So,
how did you leverage the book? You mentioned a couple of times that you started promoting, leveraging the book like 12 months before it was actually even published, which means that was probably before the first draft or the first 30,000 kind of words was even penned, right? Walk me through that.
Well, I remember yourself and the infamous Andrew Griffiths saying that writing the book's the easy part. It's all about the promotion. And I thought to myself, right, okay, well, I better start promoting this thing well ahead for two reasons. If I've said I've written a book, I've got to write the bloody thing. So there's no walking away from that then. I've put it out there publicly that I'm doing this thing. So that gave me some extra motivation. But it meant that in terms of creating the sorts of opportunities to get in front of the people that we need to, and that's property investors and others that have an interest in property, we started reaching out. And probably the first example early last year is that I got myself a Guernsey as a stage host for the National Property Buyer Expo in Melbourne. And
how did you get it? Like, did you shoot out emails? Did it just like pop up spontaneously? Like, just slow down a bit and kind of hit some of those little bases for me.
Well, Sonia actually found out it was coming up. She sort of keeps that's my wife, Sonia, by the way. She constantly scanning for opportunities. She saw it. We reached out to the organisers, and I said, I'm writing a book on this. This is what it's called. These are my other skills. I think I could really deliver a fantastic event by asking some really good questions from the stage, because I'm from that background and I can sit alongside the gurus that you've got up there educating the masses.
And was that was it an email? Was it a phone call? How did you do it? Yeah?
Phone call followed by an email. We knocked up a slide of what the book looked like. It doesn't look like anything like that now, by the way, but it was good enough to look and feel like a real book. And I said, I want to have this slide incorporated in my presentation. So in between all the speakers, I had this ugly mugshot of me up on the screen with a view of what the Freedom Formula book looked like and a few other dot points. And so it looked real, mate. It was sort of sell it before you build it, really, in the real sense. And that got me the Guernsey there. That also then, on the strength of that, I was then able to use that experience to score a similar spot with Australia Post, who run a national pitch fest for regional business innovation. And so I scored the Guernsey to do the stage hosting exercise for that as well. And you know how it goes. It's cumulative. Once you start putting a few of these things on the board, then you use those for your next opportunity. And it was that combination of the upcoming book and what I'd done together with some work we've done a lot of work with medical specialists and mining managers and the C-suiters in terms of building their property portfolios. That then gave an excuse to reach out to the AMA through another KPI actually that I came across through the group by the name of Douglas Failbush, and I hope he doesn't mind me using his name in vain. He's an anaesthetist here in Adelaide. I had coffee with him and said, this is what I'm trying to do. He got me an audience with the AMA, and on the strength of the book and everything else, away we went. The other thing that I think was helpful, Glenn, is that working with Michael Hanrahan Publishing, and those guys are gurus, came up with the concept of coming up with advanced copies of the book. So it wasn't quite finished. There was still a fair bit to be done. But I produced a number of copies that looked good enough to pass a test, and have used those to shoot out to some of the industry gurus to use that as leverage to get in front of them and then start building the opportunity. So, as an example, next week, early the following week, I've got a podcast slot with a guy called Kevin Turner, who runs the Real Estate Talk podcast. It's probably the leading real estate podcast in the marketplace here in Australia. And again, that would never have come about if I hadn't have been able to put something in front of him that he was pretty excited to have a chat about. What's
super cool is that, like, your skill set hasn't changed. Like, you've been doing the do for your clients exactly the same. It's just now repackaged, and all of a sudden all this other stuff is, springing up everywhere.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think the other big bonus, and I think it was one of the very first things you said when we had the pleasure of having listened to you, Glenn, that is you've got to get yourself out of the business. You've either got to deliver the business or promote the business. You can't do both. And it's like, bingo, okay. So we looked internally, and each element of the delivery side of the process I've been progressively relieving myself of. So with the strategy component is handled by someone. We've got a business model that I'll talk about that I think works really well in the service industry, and this might be useful to some others that are listening. I affectionately refer to it as the finders, the binders, the minders, and the winders model. And from a service delivery perspective, we break it up into the finders. So they're the people that are going out there promoting the business, creating the opportunity. They then flick past it to the binders, and in our business, the binders are the strategists and the finance architects. And I call them finance architects, given my background, but they're actually designing the finance structure to suit a particular investor. Then we've got the minders in behind them. So the minders then are doing all the administration, make it happen stuff. And then in the center of that circle is the winder, and that's my good wife. She's the systems queen who just has this innate ability to be able to template everything within an inch of its life. And you put that together.
There's got to be a whiner and diner in there somewhere, surely.
Hey, mate, I'm going to add that to my job description. So I'll be the finder, the winder, and the diner. I like that. That's it. That's me. I'm in. I am there. So it's a bit wanky, I know, but it really works, mate, because it enables us to break it down into a fairly easy process that sits really well alongside what the investors are looking to achieve.
And did you have that process? I know this is just curious. Did you have that process pre-developed, KPI and Dent, or was that something you did through product?
Yeah, refined through product. So we sort of roughly knew, but we've put real structure around that now. Yeah. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we've done. I think the really exciting thing that we've done, Glenn, is that because, again, as a philosophy, we don't want to be the biggest. I've been biggest and I don't like it, Glenn, to be honest. When I say biggest, in the architecture days, if I look at when I came on board to privatise the Commonwealth Government Department, I was personally responsible for over 100 people. I've spent the first 3 months coming on board with that business sacking people because we've halved the organisation to make it lean and mean. And I went totally grey during that period because I was sacking people whose lives were the public service and thought they had a job for life. And here's this Johnny-come-lately coming in to tell them, see you later. That was probably the biggest management challenge and leadership challenge I've ever had to experience. We ended up in the same place with our previous property finance business, 30-odd people feeding the machine. And we're definitely a lifestyle business, mate. So we've got a very small, lean team, and each and every one of us now is paid by performance. There's no hourly rate, there's no wages, there's no salaries. Every single one of us is about delivering and sharing the love. So if we look at the income that comes in through from the client side, which is a mixture of the strategy, the finance, and the property delivery, we've got percentage splits that each and every one of us enjoys as part of that process. So it means that we're all part of achieving the end result, and if we're not eating, no one's eating.
So do you have that structured as though they're employees, or are they external consultants that send an invoice through?
Yeah, it's an invoice exercise.
Yeah, right. So you just get to be, you're purely an IP play. You're not running a heavy payroll structure.
No,
it's you've totally de-risked the whole business model.
Spot on, and very deliberately, and that came out of KPI. That was another light bulb moment. It's like, okay, what are we doing? We're building this machine that we've got to feed. If we recarve it up in such a way that the outgoings follow the income, then all of a sudden we've got a very sustainable, manageable model, and very profitable model too, by the way. It's massively improved the profit side of the equation. And I've always been a big believer that, turnover and revenue means naught. It's what ends up in your back pocket.
100%.
Makes a difference. Yep.
What do they say? Revenues vanity, profits sanity, but cash is reality.
Cash is reality. That's the one. That's exactly right. That's exactly right, mate. So
true.
Being big ascribers of that, and the really simple. I think what KPI has helped us do is to formularise everything we do. So, I mean, the freedom formula speaks for itself. We formularise the process we do that, and that has made it into a really easy to describe and easy to follow process. We run with a very similar formula internally, Glenn, and it's no rocket science with this, but we're in the trust business, and you only build trust by building relationships. And in a service business, there's only 4 key things that a client can measure you on, because they don't know the intricacies of the property side, and they don't need to, and they don't actually want to. They just want us to get the shit done for them. But what they can measure us on are 4 fundamentals. So we have this, we call it the know how now formula, and it's all about the customer experience. So we call it the F to the power of 4, 100, 0. And the 4 Fs are fast, friendly, frequent, fun. And the 100, 0 is 100% accountability and 0 excuses. So each and every member of the team is totally responsible for what they're doing. There's no finger pointing. It's all about, well, what did I do to contribute to this, and what am I going to do differently? And the 4 Fs are the things that clients can measure us on. So how fast are we at responding? How frequently do we communicate? How friendly are we in relation to the interaction? And how much fun do we have on the journey? Because if we get those 4 things right, then the client loves us. They've had a fantastic experience. They're actually enjoying the interaction. It's not a slog. We're actually having fun along that journey, and they're then empowered to go and tell their friends and family to do the same.
Do you ask for them to quantify that for you? Do you actually put that in a survey and go, how were we on our 4 Fs?
Yes, we do, mate. So we do a follow-up call 2 weeks after we've delivered the core result, and that's an important part of that exercise, mate. And then we then measure that internally in terms of how many people have we helped, what benefit have they had, and how many people they actually do refer as a consequence of going through that process. So we've got a really simple goal. For every person we looked after, our goal is to get 2, for them to refer 2 people to do the same thing. And with that ripple effect, it's pretty quick. You can grow a business very quickly doing that.
Mate, I'm also interested in, I love the fact that you've brought your whole business model back to performance, but you also changed your pricing structure. And this is one of the things that, the Dent accelerators try and, really compress people into a position where that becomes the only option. And yet it's difficult to get people to stop charging for time or by the hour or what have you. You had a bit of a shift around how you used to price. Can you go through that?
Absolutely. And that shift comes as a result of self-confidence and self-belief in the value that you're offering.
It is, isn't it?
That's all it is.
Yeah.
And I often say to people, and I say to our team, if you can't convince a client that this is value, then that's not because they don't believe it, it's because you don't. And I think what we've come to learn as a result of everything we've done in building the asset base around the business is this level of quiet self-confidence that we know that we are adding significant value. We can quantify that value, and therefore we should be getting part of it. And by doing so, we are telling the clients that we believe in what we're doing so much that if you're going to pay us a percentage of that growth, then that should give you some confidence that you're doing the right thing. So it's a fairly easy thing to sell. Now, if I look before and after, so before, a lot of the IP stuff, the strategy piece at the beginning of our process is our unique piece, because very few people do it, and very few people adopt the financial planning approach to property. So we've developed a quite in-depth exercise, and early on I was doing that for nothing, mate. I was just giving that away as a reason to get people in front of us and as a way of people talking about us, and then churning out the income through the finance side of the equation with the fees and the commission structure.
And this is the life design stuff you're talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly right. So what we've incorporated in the exercise now, and we still give the clients the options. So we can either charge them a fee to do it all of it up front, or we can reduce that fee and take a percentage of the growth of the portfolio based on an annual independent market valuation. So that's getting skin in the game, and some will take it, some won't. If they don't take that option, then the fee is reasonably sizable compared to what we used to do, and it means that either way, from a financial perspective, the business is doing very well, but so are the clients, mate. The clients are doing very well with the stuff that we're doing for them. So, what we spend our time on initially is demonstrating what the financial, lifestyle and other benefits are to them. And then when we get around to talking about how we get paid, it's insignificant in comparison.
Yeah, and look, you don't want to pay the cheapest surgeon either.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I often use the analogy, mate, in the property sphere, that if you've got a brain tumour, then you're not going to Google it, go to Bunnings, get a scalpel, some cotton wool and some metho and have a crack at it in front of the mirror in the bathroom.
Don't knock Bunnings. For anyone that
knock you up the chair, but not brain surgery, mate.
For anyone that doesn't know, Bunnings are like the size of a state hardware store, and you can just go in and it's like, ooh, look at all the things. You can buy anything. It's amazing.
Yeah, dead right, mate.
Mate, how did the value pricing go for existing clients? Did you change anything for existing clients, or was it just new clients?
Predominantly new clients. It's been a bit of an education process for existing clients, no question. And I've got to say, this has probably been one of the biggest challenges for me, Glenn, in the transition, because going from a delivery system where I was a central part of that delivery to being hands off and becoming deliberately the sense of being hard to get. The old Richard Branson approach, where if you go to Virgin, you don't expect to get Richard on the phone. We've taken that on board again as another learning from the Dent KPI process, and my wife has been Sonia has been brilliant at putting some structure around that. But there are still clients that we're pretty intimate with our clients over a long time, because it is as I mentioned earlier, it's a long-term journey, and there are still quite a number of those who still expect to be talking to me. So what I had to do with that is to have a couple of key conversations with them at appropriate times, give them the confidence that the people that are now looking after them are actually better than what I am at doing that component of the delivery, and then just touching base with them at the end to say, how did it go and where to from here.
You made a key point. I'm interested in kind of your words around it, though. How did your pitch change? How did your product change to what was the philosophy or some of the principles behind it in your words that kind of allowed you, considering you are the expert, you are the key person of influence, how did you sell people on the idea of spending more money to work with you guys to get a result without you?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Glenn. So I think the key thing here, as part of the metamorphosis, relates to the fact that before doing the 5 Ps as part of the KPI process, we were really a finance broking organisation who knew a little bit about property. And that was in our heads as much as anything. Versus the recognition that what we're actually doing for clients is allowing them to get their time and their freedom back by building a property portfolio, and the finance just happens to fall out of the back of that. That's a very different positioning exercise, and because we can quantify that, we can actually demonstrate exactly what the impact's going to be financially. That's a completely different message and a completely different positioning exercise, and therefore a very different discussion with both existing and new clients.
And that's the whole people don't buy drill bits, they buy holes.
Yeah, spot on. Absolutely. Yeah. Which again, you guys are really good at getting us to wake up to that. And I think the other thing that helped with that is that we almost used to live under a rock before KPI. We almost saw chest beating promotion as egotistical and big-headed. Whereas what you've helped me personally become comfortable with is that if I can get the voice out there, I'm actually helping a lot more people. So I don't feel like I'm chest beating. I actually feel like I've got the opportunity to really spread the word, and it's given us a confidence. So it's a little thing that's made a massive difference, Glenn, which I didn't think would. I started doing what I call bush bites, which are Facebook Lives. They're just little 5-minute segments. I started that around about 12 months ago. When straight after the National Property Buyers Expo, I just started doing these little snippets, and it did 2 things. The awareness went right up. I got massive feedback from it, but it also positioned me very quickly as an expert in the property investment space. And the amount of inquiry that came from that just blew my mind, actually, mate. It really blew my mind. And I wouldn't have been able to do the bush bites, though, if I hadn't written the book, because we refined the pitch, we'd come up with the structure. The book gave me I've got enough information in that book to do bush bites for eternity, mate. And so it became really easy for me just to give a little snippet, and the audience building and the familiarity and the recognition that it's come out of that as an adjunct to everything else we're doing, it's just been bloody awesome.
Mate, I've experienced that as well. And to anyone listening, I probably 6 months ago started really focusing on Facebook. I'm such a Facebook fanboy. Bushy, you've been saying just the most lovely things about my business. Mark Zuckerberg is just my freaking hero. I don't use Facebook socially really all that much, but I started doing Facebook videos kind of with a focus to do Facebook videos about 6 months ago, releasing a couple a week. And I don't have like millions of people watching my videos. We get 10,000, 20,000, sometimes a couple of 100,000. Hopefully if you listen to this in a few years, it'll be more. But the interesting stat that I dug into is, on average, over the last few months, people are watching 2,000 hours of my Facebook videos a week.
Wow, 2,000
hours a week. Like you sit there and you think, okay, if I pay a full-time salesperson, a full-time BDM to be beating the streets, drumming up business, waving the flag, doing all that sort of stuff, call it 100, call it 150 grand a year, depending on where you are or what you do. God, even if you call it 50 grand a year, but that would get you at like real capacity. They might spit out between 1,000 and 1,500 effective hours a year as part of their job. Like you pay people about for 15,000 hours a year in a full-time job. I'm getting that and some a week, and it's me. It's my voice. It takes me like 5 minutes a week. We spit out shit that I've been saying and learning for years, right? So it's not like a struggle, yeah. And I'm saying this not to be kind of arrogant, but just because people are listening have been saying the same shit for 10 years as well, you know. Yeah. And I had every reason under the sun, like, I'm too late to the game. I said the same stuff for this podcast. Gary Vaynerchuk's already doing video, and I don't want to look like a dickhead like him. And I'm not like him. No, not like that's not what I meant. But you know, because it's so easy to look like you're imitating someone else, sort of thing. And anyway, finally moved all that junk in my brain aside. And, mate, literally when I meet new people now, 1 in 3 of them, in Sydney, right? So in my city where I spend the majority of time and we focus a lot of the stuff that we do, 1 in 3 people that I meet are like, oh, I've seen your videos. And it's like the most bizarre experience, more so than anything else I've done.
I totally agree. I mean, we're a shadow of what you'd be doing in volumes, mate. The good news is, I guess from our perspective, we don't need masses. We just need the right people. And the really good news about that, just as you're saying, because, as I mentioned earlier, we're in the trust business. If you're in the trust business, you're in the relationship business. And the only way someone is going to develop trust and relationship is if they feel like they know you. Now, the Facebook Lives, more than anything else, and the podcast that we're releasing, Get Invested, will probably have a similar potential impact, I'm hoping. But for people to be able to see you, hear you, and get a sense of you, and the authenticity is going to come through, good, bad, or otherwise. You'll scare some people away, and other people go, yeah, I really like this bloke. And it's like this bloke stuff that starts the journey. And the number of people that have contacted us, and when I start talking to them, they'll say, yeah, no, I've listened to your Bush Bites. I know you know what you're talking about. Well, it's half done the job for me, mate. It's just, I used to spend a lot of time having to lay down the ground rules so that people understood. Well, the Bush Bites have started to do that already. So it's just awesome. That's just blown me away, mate. Actually, I didn't think it would have that much impact.
And look, this is, again, for someone listening, this is what we're talking about when we say like income or influence follows assets. Like instead of me just running around or you just running around, there's now perpetual content out there that people are consuming at scale. And what that does what that did for my business, what that's obviously done for yours is super cool. So if you're sitting on a whole bunch of ideas in your head and you're not doing anything with it, crack the whip. Bushy,
just get it out there.
I want to talk about your methodology.
Sure.
Talk to me about the journey of refining and defining that. Where did it happen? How did it happen? How has it evolved? Why has it been good?
In terms of the client journey, you mean?
Not so well. Yeah, like your method for how you that's in the core ideas in your book in terms of the principles people need to understand to be able to master property as a lifestyle.
Yeah. Okay. Easy. All right. So. Just reiterating a little bit of what I talked about before, and I've called it the freedom formula because that's what everyone wants. All of us, every one of us, we boil down to it. It's freedom because if you've got freedom, you've got choices. You can do what you like when you like. Now, freedom in the Western, and I'm talking Western society here, boils down to time because if you've got the time, you can do the stuff, and the only way you're going to get time is if your income needs, which is, let's face it, unfortunately, or like it or lump it, money is the oxygen and the lifeblood of the way we live. Then you've got to generate a means to fund your lifestyle so that you're not having to do it. You're not wealthy until you've got time on your hands. So what does that mean? So the process that we now take people through, as I mentioned, we call it the property wealth clock, which is a 6-step growth revolution, and it incorporates the freedom formula principles. So there's 8 principles that fall into a 6-step process, and the freedom formula. I've related it to the health industry. You and I started talking earlier on about health as a major driver, and a lot of us who get busy in business and chasing our careers. The health is the last thing that we think about. It gets put right down the list. And a lot of us are in tune, are now onto the preventative health. exercise. So you're getting plenty of sleep, plenty of exercise, you're eating well, you're getting plenty of supplements and plenty of vitamins. So we've drawn the parallels with the Freedom Formula to what we call a preventative wealth vitamin supplement. And the vitamins actually break down into those 8 ingredients. And those 8 ingredients, which are the key principles, the first 3 are the growth factors. And the growth factors are the value of property that you're able to achieve based on your income and liabilities, the interest rate of growth, which is compounding growth, and time. And we often start by saying, look, if you're going to regain your time, your freedom, and your life, then you need to start giving yourself plenty of TLC, where T is time, L is leverage of other people and other people's money, and C is the compounding growth, which is, as Einstein refers it to, as the 8th wonder of the world. So the first 3 of those principles are value, the interest rate of growth, and time. And time's about using the time now to use the time you've got to give you time at the other end. And that's the biggest challenge for most people because they never get around to it. And then the last 4 ingredients of that vitamin supplement, which makes up vitamins, are what I call the setup and sustainability factors. And they are binary. So the A is for affordability. So there's no point rushing out and buying a property, which most people do, by the way. They'll rush out and buy the property and then work out what they're going to do with it. And once each and every cost comes into play, suddenly it becomes unaffordable. Whereas what we do is we work very closely with accountants, financial planners and others to really structure a property so that it's either cash flow neutral or only incurring a minor cost. And therefore it becomes sustainable to hang on to. It doesn't affect your lifestyle while you're hanging on to it, and it doesn't bite into salary or savings. So that affordability piece is a key one that most people don't get their head around until too late. So that's the first one. Mindset is the next one. Now, we all know about mindset. It's about having the right attitude. And in property, the mindset you need to have is one of wealth by stealth or a long-term view, because if you're going to do well in property and continue to do well in property, you've got to go through a full property cycle, which is anywhere between 8 and 15 years. So you need to be going in not expecting to get instant results. So we spend a lot of time resolving expectations. The next one is income. So to replace your income, you've got to have an income. So, these speakers I hear talk about, jumping into property and creating a career out of it. You can't do the property leveraging other people's money unless you've got an income to support it. So you need an income to replace your income. So we talk about what that means and how that needs to work. The next major supplement as part of those vitamins preventative wealth program is N for network, and that's recognising that success in anything is a team sport, and property in particular is an elite team sport, and you're not a player. If you're out there buying the property, it's a bit like I'm a mad Richmond supporter, mate, so I'm pretty happy at what happened last year. But I often say to people, if you're going to go out up against the Tigers or the Crows and you're a one-man against an 18-man side, then you're not going to do very well. You need to be owner of the team and then surround yourself with the best players in each and every aspect of that property delivery team who work together to achieve your end. So you're the owner, everyone else makes it happen. And then finally, the S is for strategy. So that's getting very clear around what strategy you're adopting. And I won't bore you with this now, mate, but a lot of people get caught up on cash flow versus capital growth and all the rest of it. But it's really easy to boil out down in a way that it becomes crystal clear what they need to be doing around achieving the goals. And it's a concept that we've developed called the freedom number, which just makes it pretty simple for people to work out. So there's 4 components of the freedom number. The first component of that is what is your lifestyle number, and your lifestyle number is the income that you need to sustain your ideal lifestyle. So the first thing we do, Glenn, if I sat down with you, is to say, okay, how do you want to live? What's your perfect day, your perfect week, your perfect month, and your perfect year look like? It's because when we put some shape around that becomes the magnet that's going to keep you focused on this thing, and it's very easy to monetize that and work out how much that costs. So let's say that a comfortable lifestyle when you don't have to work anymore is 120 grand a year. Let's just use that as an example. We then need to look at what your nest egg number is, because 120 grand, to produce 120 grand at a 5% return, you need to have 2.4 mil worth of income producing assets, yeah?
Yep.
So your nest egg number is 2.4. The next component is your the timeline. What's the break-free timeline? So you might say to me, well, I want to be in that position 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Let's say 20 years was the time frame that you were looking at. Then your freedom number in property terms is 2 properties. So we can go from where you want to, how you want to live, right through to what you need to be doing with property just by following that very simple freedom number concept. And it starts to put some shape around this thing, and that's the basis of the model that we then revisit regularly to see how they're going and make sure that things are still on track. So they're all the principles, and they tie in then to a very simple property wealth clock growth revolution. And that is step 1, starting with your why. So that's getting crystal clear around exactly how you want to live, and therefore what sort of a recurring income needs to make that happen. We then move to the E, which is the examination. So examining what your capability is based on your income and liabilities position. That allows us to develop the approach, which is what we call the strategy. We don't call it a strategy, we call it a strategy, because we're actually getting you started on your journey to freedom. And then and only then, we've built it on paper, we introduce the appropriate expert under the leverage other people's, so L's for leverage, and that's levering your delivery team. And then and only then, once we've put that in place, do we actually look at the treatment, which is actually getting the property itself. And then every 12 months, we're catching up with them to revisit under the H for health check. And then we start again. And we just keep doing that repeatedly and then refining and guiding to make sure that things are on track. And if your why changes, if your lifestyle changes, if your numbers change, then it's just a matter of reshuffling that and reshaping it. So it's a very easily repeatable process. We've been able to document that internally so that if someone gets hit by a truck, that we can just put someone back in and the process will continue.
And I wanted to dive into that, because that process just creates so much certainty, not just for the customer. Speaking of which, right now, where can they go to get the book?
Yeah, yeah.
Because someone's listening to this, I'm sure. Like I'm like, fucking, I'm in. Like, tell me, where do I go?
Yeah, well, by the time this comes out, it'll be available on the website, mate, which is www.khgroup.com.au. So that's www.khgroup.com.au.
I'll have it all in the show notes as well. But it just creates so much certainty from the customer's perspective. So again, let me ask, before and after the kind of the KPI gauntlet, I suppose.
Yep.
To what degree had that already been codified?
Not at all. We sort of did it, but we didn't know we were doing it, and we didn't communicate it very well.
All right. So once it became codified, what kind of effect did that new structure for communication, I guess? Because you just communicated a lot in, 10 minutes, right?
Yep.
Which for an end result like freedom and buying property, etc., is not a lot of time.
Sure.
How did that have an effect on talking to prospects, marketing, anything of that nature?
Massive, mate. I can sit, and the good news about part of all of this exercise, I talk about here's the problems that we've seen. This is the pitch process. Here's the problems we've seen. This is the solution. These are the results you're going to get. And some of the results, we get some pretty quick heroin hits. So the first thing we do when we sit down with someone is to say, okay, let's restructure your finances. And quite often we're putting in excess of $1,000 a month back in someone's pocket just by restructuring their finances. And that's like, holy shit, how good's this? And then that then generally pays for the start on the process anyway. We'll also set it up so you're keeping somewhere between 10 and 20 grand a year in tax in your pocket. So that suddenly changes the way you look at life. And that sets it up then to be able to produce a recurring income down the track of anywhere between $100,000 and $300,000 a year. So, and we actually structure it in such a way that we funnel all of those benefits into knocking off the home loan if they've got one in half the time and saving tens of thousands of dollars in interest costs. So it's a pretty easy sell, mate, when you actually boil it down to that. But we hadn't actually gone through the process of codifying that and focusing on the benefits to the client. We got stuck on the process. We were doing the process, and we kept talking about all of the nitty-gritties that we thought were important, but we weren't focusing on what was important to the people who wanted us to get it done. So a lot of that stuff I talked to you about, as I said earlier, they just want the result. So we talk about the result, and then if you put them into a process that gives them confidence of knowing, well, here I am now, this is what I need to do, and if I don't do these things, this is what's going to be in the result. It's like, right, okay, it's crystal. I've got peace of mind now because I know where I'm heading. I can enjoy today because I know that tomorrow's actually been looked after.
You've created like the Henry Ford production line, but for IP, but for a service business.
Yeah, spot on. Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And that is, I'm sounding like a stuck record now, but we would never have got to that place if we hadn't have dived in deep to Dent and KPI.
Mate, what about, thank you. Right, thank you. What about rolling yourself out of the sales side of things? How did that methodology have an effect on that?
Okay, a bit more information there, mate. What do you mean?
Oh, well, so from my experience, having the 5 Ps to talk about, right?
Yep.
Or when we talk about creating a high-performance environment, right? So if I break down a high-performance environment, you need 5 things. You need strategy and access to the world-leading strategy and best practice by people that have done it before to avoid trial and error.
Yeah, gotcha.
You need access to a peer group, which normalizes success. You need a high degree of external accountability, so you don't get caught up in your own bullshit. You need access to the tools and resources to save you, time and focus and create focus. And there needs to be some kind of a common goal. If you look at any high-performance environment, whether it's the SAS or an emergency room at a hospital or a monastery full of monks mastering, transcending to nirvana, it all has access to those sort of 5 elements. Now, you take that methodology combined with the key person of influence methodology or our 24 assets methodology for larger businesses, and the ability for someone other than myself or Dan to communicate that in a way that moves people's minds and emotions forward fast, like gets them to a yes quickly, has become codified.
Yes,
I suppose, and therefore making the sales process a lot more scalable. And I was just curious as to your experience on that.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress, early days, but it is already producing some really good fruit. And part of what Sonia and I are now doing to really reinforce that is we're actually video recording the sales process that I deliver, and then that's going to be documented as a training course for the rest of the team, both the strategists and the finance architects, so that they can start to deliver that strategy component themselves. So it's already having an impact because we've given them a framework to be able to do that, but it's a little bit inconsistent at the moment. So that next step for us is to physically video and then turn that into a training module that will enable people to go back to and do it. And that's going to flow into some webinars and other bits and pieces as well that, again, will give us an opportunity to send the same message out to a broader audience.
What would you say has been your proudest achievement?
My proudest achievement, mate? Are we talking life generally, business-wise?
Your business.
My proudest achievement, mate, is the lifestyle that I now enjoy as a result. And that's been the big goal for me, mate. I talked to you about the burnout factor when I was an architect. I just never, ever want to get back to that. And we have a fantastic life now, mate. I pinch myself. Glenn.
You shared it the other day at the Design Your Life workshop thing that we ran. Would you just paint a picture for the listener in terms of where you live? Yeah,
mate. We live on a beautiful homestead on the top of a hill looking down a green valley in the beautiful McLaren Vale wine region with a distant view of the sea. No neighbours. We live on 55 acres. It's a bit like Noah's Ark, Glenn. We've got pretty much one of everything. So we've got a couple of pigs, a couple of goats, a llama who thinks it's a sheep, half a dozen sheep, some chickens, some geese, 5 dogs. They're all rescues. 4 of them are Samoyeds. And, mate, I don't know if you're familiar with Samoyeds, but Samoyeds are just... To wake up in the morning to a smiling Samoyed is like the day can't start any better than that. And we've got the blessing of waking up to the sound of kookaburras, kangaroos bounding across the hill. Sonia and I have a ritual now where we start the day visualising what the day is going to be like. So we start with gratitude, and it's a pretty easy place to have gratitude, mate. So we start focusing on and imagining the day. We then either take the dogs for a walk, go for a jog, or go to the gym. So I get my physical stuff out of the road because I'm a mad hockey player, mate. I've been playing field hockey since I was 11, and they're going to have to shoot me to stop me. So I keep very fit to do that and love going to the gym because I burn it out. And then come home, we have a very leisurely breakfast. I then jump on the piano for half an hour because I'm a mad muso as well, and just love what the piano does for me in terms of calming the nerves and just facing the day. And then we start work sort of somewhere between 10 and 10:30. So, and we live and work there. So we've got the homestead. We walk across the courtyard to our studio office. It's a separate building that's predominantly glass that sits on the hill as well, looking down the valley. The team comes up at their discretion. They bring their own dogs if they want to, so it's like doggy daycare. The dogs can run amok because we've sort of got an area where they can have some fun. Quite often the dogs are sitting in and around us during the day. We're all teched up. We've got everything that we need, so, you know, that's the benefit of technology these days. You can work from anywhere and look good. And as a peaceful place to live, mate, awesome. The business gives us opportunity to travel. We travel 2 or 3 months of the year, which is a big thing for Sonia and I. So, mate, it just doesn't get any better, Glenn. So that's the biggest achievement, is the time that we've got back to enjoy that and to have that place and to help others to achieve the same thing is just like I've been kissed on the bum.
Again, another one of those visceral comments. What about your philosophy on contribution? Obviously, you serve your clients to achieve incredible things. What about beyond that?
Yeah, mate. Well, a big part of our mission is what I call golden smiles. And I mentioned the smiling Samoyeds before, Glenn. Something that Sonia and I are very passionate about is the abuse of the voiceless and the innocent. And that relates particularly to 2 areas of our society. One is to abandon pets. And would you believe there's about 200,000 abandoned pets that are euthanised each and every year in Australia, mate? And it never ceases to appall me how that can happen to innocent victims. I mean, dogs, I don't know whether you've got a dog, Glenn, but they are the best companions. Unconditional love. You get so much from a dog, mate. I learn a lot from a dog about how to live life. If I'm having a stressful day, I just look in the dog's eyes, and it's like, oh shit, what am I worrying about? You know, they live in the moment more than any of us. And so our passion, one of our goals as a business, is to eliminate abandoned pet euthanasia. And we've developed the concept of golden smiles. Now, this is a work in progress. So what we're doing at the moment, for example, the book proceeds are going towards a group called Living It Rough and Doing It Tough. And Living It Rough and Doing It Tough are a non-for-profit here that looks after the pet needs of the homeless, because quite often the only companion that a lot of the homeless have is their pet. That's the last remaining thing. And quite often when they end up homeless, they lose their pet because they can't afford to look after it. So Living It Rough actually caters for the health and veterinary needs and the food support of the pet and the homeless themselves. So that's the first step. And the way we see this happening, mate, is we talk about this concept of golden smiles, and it's a little bit wanky, but golden smiles, from that perspective, are putting golden smiles in the latter years of pets, abandoned pets, and the elderly in the community. Because the other thing that we see is that, unfortunately, in Western society, wisdom doesn't seem to be respected, and you get to a point of getting old and people don't want to know about you. So there's a lot of very lonely elderly people living in their homes without any companionship. Our vision for Golden Smiles and Life with Paws, as Sonia calls it, is to bring together abandoned pets together with the lonely elderly, and then support them through a foster network that looks after the vet bills, minds the dogs at times when the individual can't. So that's the big picture. If we boil that down, how are we going to make that happen? Well, we're going to take people on a journey. So the way the business ties into that is threefold. So we start off with home ownership. So we go from home ownership to life ownership to community ownership, and we're basically creating happy homes with all of those three. So if we can get you into home ownership, that then allows that gets you comfortable, and then we can build that into life ownership by building a property portfolio that sustains your lifestyle. You've got golden smiles on your face because you're living where you want to and financially you're okay. And if we're using a portion of the proceeds and we get each client to contribute a portion to that as well as a business, then we're going to achieve the ultimate golden smiles for the abandoned pets and the old and the lonely. So that's a big vision. I've got a long way to go with that, mate, and it's pretty early in the piece, and living it rough is the start, and we're using the book and some of the other bits and pieces to do that. But if over the long term we can eliminate pet euthanasia and at the same time give companionship to the old and the lonely, then that's got to be a good thing.
Mate, I just love it. For my last question, and it's a question that I tend to ask a lot because it's a question that I tend to think a lot about because it keeps me honest. If you were to think or imagine yourself a long, long, long way in the future, because at some point it's going to be your last day, your last hour, your last minute on this planet. And I want you to imagine you're there, surrounded by great friends, great family, and a great legacy. And if a young child, maybe it's a great-great-grandchild or something along those lines, came up and asked you for some advice on how they could live a great life like you did, what would you say?
Yeah, three things I reckon, Glenn. I'd say live by design, not by default. And what I mean by that is be very intentional about how you're going to live your life, because most of us don't. We allow life to happen to us. So live by design. Remember that freedom follows foster. And what I mean by freedom follows foster is that it's a bit of a takeoff of, I've heard people talk about freedom follows discipline, but I find discipline a really negative, restrictive, controlling word. This is semantics, but when I say freedom follows foster, it's recognizing that if you want to be free, that you do need to nurture, grow, and with persistence and patience, you will achieve that freedom over time by really embracing time as your friend, not your enemy. And I see a lot of people everywhere treating time as the enemy, Glenn. It's got to happen now. It's got to happen yesterday. It's got to be instant. And that's been exacerbated by the fact that we've all got iPhones and everything is pretty much instant now. But if my grandson can adopt and build his patience and persistence muscles through Freedom Follows Foster, I know he's going to do well. And finally, I would say to him or her, dream big as if you're going to live forever and live today as if it's your last, because I think that covers the vision aspect as well as the benefits of living in the moment and having fun right now.
Really beautiful words. And Bushy, I just want to acknowledge you. This is something that Lewis Howe on his podcast does really well, and I think to have the opportunity to acknowledge the work that you've done, I mean, to go through such a crucible, and I think while the shit hitting the fan in people's lives is so common, how you've handled it and what you've created off the back of that is what I think to be so rare. And the fact that you've been able to do that, since the first day I met you, your enthusiasm, this twinkle in your eye, this kind of a cheeky little grin that it doesn't matter how bad it gets or how challenging it's going to be, you're just going to, bring the enthusiasm to solving the problems and making it work and making it great. And every step of the way I've seen you do that in the building of your business, and it's ended up creating a business that gives you more of that smile and that twinkle in your eye. And mate, I wanted to acknowledge you for that because you mentioned Sarah at the start, my girlfriend,
yes.
And she says
she's a keeper, mate.
She says over and over again, she says energy is everything. Your only job is to feel good. And I just get such great energy from you so consistently. I just wanted to really acknowledge you for that. I wanted to thank you for being on the podcast, and I'm just going to link up everything in the show notes in terms of the links to you and your book. But if someone wants to reach out and connect with you either as a speaker or as a property mentor, or to be able to get your book, or to be able to connect from a potential joint venture perspective from the business side of things, how can they connect with you, Bushy? Yeah,
really easy, mate. The website's a great place to start, as I mentioned before, www.khgroup.com.au, or you can email me at bushy@khgroup.com.au, or pick up the phone and ring us. We're people. So 0883 836 990, mate. Pick up the phone and have a chat. We don't hide. We love to talk to people. So bring it on. I just want to say something quickly too, mate, and my energy enthusiasm is a choice. I learned long ago that happiness isn't a situation or circumstance. It actually is a physical choice. But that energy that you're talking about comes from having the pleasure to spend time with people like yourself, mate. And energy only sparks when it's in the presence of a flame. So I want to acknowledge yourself and your team, mate, as enabling us to really enjoy the life that we now have, and it's really turbocharged what we've been doing as a consequence of everything that Dent and KPI does, mate. So I thank you. The one thing that I haven't had a chance to mention is that the community that Dent and KPI have created is one of the major benefits of being part of it, because over here in little old Adelaide's a sensational place. It's the best kept secret in the country, but it's a very conservative culture. And there's always a reason why you can't do something. One of the unseen benefits of being part of the KPI community is that we're swimming in a pool of people like yourself and all of the other entrepreneurs that are part of that group that are looking at opportunities in each and everything they do, sharing that, bouncing off, brainstorming. Mate, that energy, when you talk about energy, is just exponential. So absolutely love the community that you've created and continue to create and give us reasons to rub our shoulders. And it's that energy that we get collectively that enables us to go out and face the rest of the world, mate.
Man,
awesome.
I'm stoked you love it, because I get the same from it. And my commitment this year, 2018, is around bringing the community together in more ways, around not just creating more, but contributing more as well. I wanted to mention it to you. I can't remember if I mentioned it the other day, but September last year, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation hosted a Goalkeepers event, which is bringing together, great thinkers, doers, and givers that are in some way serving one of the 17 UN Global Goals for Sustainable Development.
Yeah,
right?
Awesome.
So we're doing a little Goalkeepers event on the 27th of February. In Sydney. We're about to launch it, so when you get the invite, it's going to be exclusive for the community. I've got some incredible people that have embedded giving in such incredible ways into their businesses that are going to be sharing it.
Awesome.
And I think this is really going to spark a conversation that's going to move people in cool ways. I've got a personal goal that I want to activate 1,000 small business goalkeepers. So no matter what they're giving to, if they're also aligning it to one of the UN Global Goals, which pretty much whatever you're giving to, I mean, you're supporting life on land, which is one of the 17 global goals.
Yes.
You're also supporting health and well-being. And all those sorts of things. I
agree, mate.
when you
talked through the global goals last year, it was like, we've actually put on the website, mate. On our website, it's there now, as a direct result of what you talked about there, because it encompasses everything and the ethos that goes with that. And then to have goalkeepers who are actually clearly there to actually make it happen and implement that, that's bloody gold, mate. So 27th of Feb?
27th of Feb, you'll get an email soon. I'd love it if you and Sonia could be there.
Be bloody good, mate, and give that lady of yours a massive hug. You're a great couple, mate. It's I don't know how you feel, but and I didn't talk enough about this either, but it's what Sonia and I together have done. What I can now do as a direct result of what she's enabled me to do, and I'm a much better person for having been with her in ways that I could talk for hours about. And I see the same potential with you and your good lady, mate. I can see the chemistry there is bloody awesome, and you're both great individually, but together, look out, mate. So it's looking bloody good from where I sit, mate.
Yeah, thanks, mate. We're both super happy. Watch this space.
Can't wait, mate.
All right, mate. Thank you.
Good on you, buddy.
I'll let you go.
Weekend, eh?
Have a good
Cheers,
one.
Bud.
See you, mate.
See you, mate. Catch ya.
How good was that? I hope you enjoyed it. To get a summary of all the investment gold and to get a copy of the show notes, email me on hello@khgroup.com.au. That's hello@khgroup.com.au. Or check us out at www.khgroup.com.au/get invested. And join me next week for another episode of the Get Invested podcast. Thanks for listening, and as always, dream as if you'll live forever and live as if you'll die tomorrow.